Why don't we get the board members to be on camera here? And while I'm doing that, or while we're doing that, I'll do a quick sound check. Make sure everybody can hear me and see me okay. John Elling, I see, is nodding. Good. All right. Mr. Tanner, I just texted back and forth with Mr. Tanner. I expect him along in a couple minutes, but he is able to join and is planning to join. All right, all good? Okay. All right, let's dive in here. So hello and welcome everybody. Let's begin our meeting. Welcome to the August 26th meeting of the board of the Valley of the Sun Waldorf Education Association and the school, which we know and operate, called Desert Marigold School. I hope everybody is doing well and is healthy. How exciting it is that school is back in session. I'm so grateful for the huge effort by our staff and faculty to get it all underway. I know it wasn't easy, but great job, everybody. I'm also grateful to our students and our parents. I recognize that there's a lot to do on their end also, so I'm grateful for their patience. I'm grateful for their attentiveness. And it requires obviously a great deal of focus to make sure everything goes as smoothly as possible. So I appreciate everybody's engagement. I think there were just a couple of hiccups here and there. I think that was to be expected with an undertaking as large and complex as this was. But by and large, from what I understand and have heard, things have gone really smoothly. So again, kudos to Christy and to our faculty and staff, and to our students and parents as well for making it all work. We're continuing to meet virtually, obviously, because of the COVID-19 epidemic and related health and safety concerns and the logistics involved with large gatherings. So as we've been saying now for the past few months, at some point we do hope to return to in-person board meetings, but I'm not sure exactly when that's going to be, in order to ensure everyone's health and safety. The public is able to attend our meeting tonight by Zoom. And as always, if there are technology issues, we just ask your patience. So let me read the opening verse. The true aim of education is to awaken real powers of perception and judgment in relation to life and living. For only such an awakening can lead to true freedom. And that's from Rudolf Steiner. My name is Matt Walker, as it says in the box next to my face. I am the board president. I am also the parent of a student at DMS. And can I ask the other board members to introduce themselves, starting with Mr. Elling?
Yes, my name is John Elling, and I am the board treasurer.
Thank you, John. April?
April Sauer, board member.
Mr. Tanner, welcome. You can introduce yourself. John Tanner, I didn't hear anything. Well, can you try that again?
Let's see if I can get it stronger.
Well, I heard you there.
All right. How about now, Matt?
That sounds good.
All right. Please excuse me. They're just having a little connection problem, but I think I have it straightened out.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Nathaniel?
Nathaniel Allen, board member and parent of 2 kids at the school.
And Gregory?
Gregory Schneider, board secretary and also a parent of 2 kids at the school.
All right, thank you, everybody. I'll do a quick preview of the agenda then we can get started. As usual, we'll go through the approval of minutes and some general administrative topics. We'll do a quick review of the timeline and process for board applicants. We'll discuss some financial matters. Not a full review of the statements, which we do once a month, and just did 2 weeks ago, so we'll do it again in 2 weeks, but not tonight. But we will discuss some other issues. We'll get an update from Christy on some things. And then the big topic, of course, is the ongoing COVID-19 situation in school operations and a discussion about if and when to reopen for in-person instruction. So that's our agenda for tonight. To log your attendance for our attendees, I see we've got a little over 30 right now. To log your attendance, you can click on the link in the agenda notice where it's indicated. It'll open an attendance sheet in Google Docs. You are not required to log your attendance, but you can do so if you choose. Another reminder is, of course, due to Arizona's open meeting law, we are limited in what we can discuss, just to the items that are on our agenda. All right, so let's get started. First thing is the approval of the minutes from our last meeting. So I will move for the approval of the minutes from our August 12 meeting.
Everybody waiting for me to second? I'll second.
Thank you, April. Any discussion? All right, hearing none. All in favor? Aye. And abstaining? All right. Thank you, Gregory. Next is a review of and some reminders about the board applicant process and timeline. April, since this is a topic that you raised, do you have it at hand?
Give me 1 second.
Yep.
You want me to go over the dates, or
I think that would be helpful.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Dates and a little bit about the process for anybody who might be listening and interested.
Okay. So we have the board application process coming up, and we vote on that in our second meeting in November. So it just got me thinking about this process and how we need to start putting information out there to the public. And so I just put together a proposed timeline of tasks that need to be done and shared this with Matt. Obviously, I can put this on Google for everybody. But the general idea is start with either this Friday or even on Monday, a communication going out to the community regarding board applications with all the board procedure documents, so they know, they have to attend 2 meetings within 6 months. They have to get their fingerprint clearance card, all those types of things. Then on October 1st, we would have their applications due. And then that would give us our 11/4 meeting to do our interviews, and then our 11/18 meeting to finish up interviews, and then it'll go to a vote. That's it.
Great. All right. Thank you, April. Yeah, so it's starting from that mid-November date and then working backwards. We need to be on top of it. So it's another way that the calendar, April, that you created is helping us out. I think it does make sense to get a communication out. If not next week, then perhaps right after Labor Day, at some point early in September would make sense, given the October 1st deadline. So any volunteers to work on that communication? I imagine it's just a matter of finding one that we've done in the past and refreshing it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is, do we have one? I didn't look for that.
I'm happy to work on that, Matt.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And that communication can include the document we already have on hand that lists all the requirements of being a board member and what we expect and that sort of thing. I'd like to see that go out multiple times leading up to, the applications being due.
Yeah, I agree. And that's why I wanted to get a jump on this, because I was just looking at how many meetings we have until we vote. And oftentimes there's a crunch for applicants to make sure they get their meetings in. So if we send this out, at the end of this week, early next week, that gives them 5 meetings that they have the chance to attend if they haven't already started attending. So, and I'll put this timeline on Google and I'll send that out to everybody so they have the dates.
That's great. Thank you, April. As pleased as I am with this group, this board, of course, I think we would all agree that adding additional voices and perspectives into the mix and growing the board a bit would be a really healthy thing for us, given what we do and how we help lead the school. So hopefully getting it started and a nice early start helps to generate some interest. So again, April, thank you for flagging that for us. All right, any other calendar related or board business, board logistics? No, okay.
Sorry, just quickly, I updated the dates for the executive director search per our last meeting. And after this meeting, I will go ahead and contact, my brain just went blank. I'm fighting a headache. I'm sorry. Abby Ross and Liz Bevan on the education that we wanted from them.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. All right, on to budget and finance matters. And for this, I'll invite Christy Kriegsfeld into the meeting. There she is. Hey, Christy. All right, so we have a few items listed out here. First is fundraising and an update on the consumables and materials fees and requests. I believe that request went out a handful of days ago. I'm not sure who's the most knowledgeable and up to date on that right now, if it's Nathaniel or April, or it might be Christy. So who knows where we stand with that, and are we seeing any amounts come in? Are we hearing anything from parents? Christy, we can't hear you.
How about now?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Sorry, I'm having audio issues with my laptop, so I'm using my phone for audio, video with laptop. Okay. So sorry.
Yeah. That's all right.
I can provide, I guess, a micro update. There are some realms who have started to have their parent meetings, and they are informing their parents about the consumable fees, what they go to, showing examples. It was really quite lovely. I attended the early childhood parent meeting on Monday, and that group of teachers did a wonderful job explaining what the consumable fees went to, why they are needed, and actually had demonstrative examples to show parents of the materials that are purchased for our students that are not covered by the funding we receive from the state. I've also had a meeting with the LDC the following day, so Tuesday, letting them know of the new informative flyers, brochures that April and Nathaniel had put together so that they can then disseminate to the teachers within their realms to incorporate during their parent meetings as well.
Okay, so we're early stages then. Still getting the word out. I assume it's an electronic document, the flyer.
It is, and there are two versions. And April, I see you shaking your head, so I'll let you speak to that.
It was just a matter of I made something and I decided I don't know about this, and so I changed it, and now we have two. So the more the merrier, and we'll just disseminate them in different ways and get the information out there as much as we can. On a personal note, I know I got my email that's linked to my auto pay saying that will go through September 1st. So I imagine we'll get a rather large influx, hopefully, from those people who set up their auto payments when they did enrollment and re-enrollment.
And thank you for mentioning that. And I had neglected to mention that as well. So they're the first round of billing invoices, although they are requested donations, they do come through that new billing portal. So families are getting notification that those consumable fees donations are requested, and it's automated, so they will continue to go out. We did have a clerical glitch in terms of there were some families who had withdrawn. They were withdrawn in all of the other systems in the school, but for that billing portion. So some families did receive invoices, even though they were not part of the school anymore. As of Monday evening, or yesterday morning, one or the other, those have been rectified. So the system should be clean and reflective of current enrollment. And so if it isn't, and there are some still lingering ones out there and parents are receiving them, even though they're no longer affiliated with the school, we do apologize, and we do ask that you email our DMS office at desertmarigold.org, or there are their contact information on our revised website to notify us that there's an error, and we will rectify it immediately. But we believe that all of that has been cleaned up.
Okay, good. Not good that there were the issues in the first place, but good that we were able to clean them up. All right. Any other questions or issues on the fundraising and consumables and materials fees? No? Okay. Update. Next one is update on the RSF negotiations. Actually, not much of an update to provide here. I'll just cover it very quickly. We provided our response to RSF. I forget the exact date, a week or 10 days ago. We did hear back from, and we, it's a negotiation. So we proposed some alternate terms to them, and we heard back from Amy Bird, who's our relationship manager there, and she mentioned that we would likely hear their reply to our counteroffer early to mid week this week, but we have not, at least I have not heard anything back. John Elling, have you heard anything back?
No, hasn't been any response yet, but they're usually pretty timely. So I think we can even expect that to come in tomorrow, but certainly by Friday.
Yeah, I wondered if we might not even see it right before this meeting. But yeah, we'll keep an eye out for it. And then I think likely our next meeting is when we would need to go into executive session and discuss some of the specifics and strategy along with that. But we're not quite ready to do that just yet. So that's where we are with that. Next item is the status of our application for the Enrollment Stability Grant Program. This, I think, was covered in Christie's report to the board if you had a chance to take a look at it. Christy, I'll paraphrase, and that is, you're on top of it. You're going to prepare the application. It's due towards the end of next week. Is that right? You're on it? Okay. Can't hear you. You're nodding, so that's a good sign. Yes.
Multiple devices. My apologies. Typically, we do engage Aspire to handle the grants management piece. However, Aspire has across the board, because of the detail that is requested by the state in order to apply for this money, they are having their clients initiate and apply, complete the application. They will provide whatever support is necessary, but yes, it will be the school's responsibility to submit the application. And so, yes, that is in progress, and it will be submitted by September 4th.
Okay. And this is for, just to make sure we're all clear on what this covers, this is in essence, the state's guarantee to provide funding at, I think it was 98% of last year's enrollment, or higher if your actual enrollment is higher.
Correct. Right? It's based on the 40th day of last fiscal year compared to this fiscal year. The only caveat is that it's not to bridge the gap of enrollment or decrease of enrollment between those two periods, but rather to cover the costs of increased expenses due to COVID-related expenses that are necessary to run the school, whether it be remote or in person or both.
So it's not general operational. It's not the state's once a month payment to the school to fund salaries and everything else.
Well, I mean, yes and no. It can, depending on what we're going to utilize that for, it's basically to bridge that gap for increased expenses. So if it is a salary that we didn't anticipate budgeting for, but need to due to additional accommodations, safety measures we need to take in order to keep school going, it would fall into that bucket.
So then how does enrollment play into that calculation?
It's an excellent question. And there is training and webinars that Aspire just sent out to all of its clients. So I will be attending that and getting that information, and I can absolutely report back.
Because those things are obviously not really dependent on enrollment. So what's the tie to enrollment? And it's disappointing. It's very different from what I thought the intention of that program was.
Same here. And I'm happy to forward the board the summary of the webinar and the keynotes that Aspire has issued to all of its clients to really get down into the detail as to what it will and will not cover.
I think that might be really helpful, given the board's responsibilities around finances broadly. This is a pretty significant component. Okay. Any questions on that, the grant program? No. Okay. Well, one other grant item that has come up, there was email traffic in the last 24 hours regarding a possible COVID-related grant from the email string was from the Arizona Early Childhood Education Association. Is that something we might be able to avail ourselves of, or at least apply for, or are we not eligible for one reason or another?
So we're not eligible. There was a couple floating around. One was DES. We are not accepting DES. There is another one that also could potentially help our private program in our early childhood. And we are on top of that and exploring what's required and whether we can be eligible to apply.
Okay. All right. Very good. All right. Well, we mentioned Aspire a moment ago, and we do have an item here, Christy, and I know it was in your report also. I just want to make sure that the board, are all aware of some of the changes here, given the amount that we pay Aspire on an annual basis and the extent with which, or to which, we are interacting with them, which is quite a bit these days. And Priscilla has been really helpful in a number of ways, gathering our financial statements and other things, as you all know, and also helping prep the school for its annual audit. But some changes have been made to the arrangement. It sounds like they're not huge changes, but more so modifications. And so, given that a few of us interact with Priscilla in particular, maybe you could just briefly touch on some of those changes.
Sure. So when we first engaged Aspire, it was more for a financial oversight piece, doing the financial reports, the reconciliations, board reporting, which was previously handled in-house by a bookkeeper. That arrangement did expand in order to really get an appreciation of where we were at from an audit perspective, retaining a new auditor, cleaning up the books. So that contract did expand over the past year. And the prior board was involved in and negotiated that contract, and it was absolutely necessary. We are now at a point where we can take more back in-house internally, and Aspire, the goal is for Aspire to return to that more financial oversight management piece. So that is what we were negotiating over the course of the summer. The difference is that we weren't able to reduce substantially the amount of their monthly services because they needed to add in the charter intervention financials and the PPE management, as well as any RSF refinancing needs and information. So we did reduce our monthly amount, and our goal is to further reduce it with check-ins with Aspire in October and December to see where we're at. We're proceeding very conservatively to ensure that everything has checks and balances associated with it, and that things do not fall through the cracks, and so that we are properly reporting. We have the processes in place in order to accurately report not only to this board and to the community, but also to the charter board and to the state. So that is our goal. That has always been the goal. And Aspire and DMS are working very closely in partnership to ensure that happens, there is a good balance, and that it is fair and just for all involved from a business perspective.
And Christy, if more of the day-to-day work is falling on DMS and the DMS staff, who's picking that part up?
So Jessica Jarrett, who's no longer with the school, but has obviously, because she was helping with the cleanup, has extensive institutional knowledge. And so she is willing to bridge that gap on a contractor basis to handle that day to day, so that Priscilla and Monique can really return to focusing on providing that financial management and support from a higher level, and again, to ensure that checks and balances. So she will be handling the daily operational bookkeeping, working very closely with Aspire and myself, so that we do have reporting processes in place. We have information that is in compliance with audit requirements, and really we needed that daily person to be able to more promptly respond to inquiries from the community, whereas Aspire, because they were handling so many other financial aspects, and then they also do have other clients, it was really necessary to strike a good balance and get the responsiveness that the community deserves with accurate information, and not having to wait for Aspire to come back on their days, which they give us 4 days a month, to handle all of that. So we do have that intermediate contact person on a contract basis, and that is Jessica Jarrett. Nothing has changed. The email account, the contact information remains the same. It's all dmsaccounts@desertmiracle.org. And so from an operations perspective, no one should feel any change. They will get the same information in a timely fashion based on inquiry.
Okay. Thank you for the summary, Christy. Board members, any questions?
So is Aspire going to be, if I understood you correctly, they're still giving kind of the high level profit and loss, balance sheet, general ledger type information for us, but the day-to-day transactional stuff is what Jessica's handling?
Correct. And I'm happy to provide a breakdown. We do have a spreadsheet in which tasks are assigned, but yes, in summary, that is accurate. Aspire will still be the one who is reconciling the accounts, presenting the financials on a monthly basis, handling payroll. I'm probably missing something, but it's along those lines. So really, what you're receiving is going to be the same. So Aspire, again, is going to be the one reporting all of that, basically that checks and balance. So we're handling operationally the daily bookkeeping, accounting, inquiries about billing, invoices. That will all be handled internally. And that is really designed to help increase the response time for those inquiries from community members, so that they're not waiting until our designated days for Aspire to come on site. So that was really our goal, and it seems to be working, and Aspire and CMS have reached an agreement where we know who's doing what, and it's clear, and we'll be able to really hone in on whether it's working and whether there's any adjustments to be made. And there are check-in points both in October and December, again, to see, okay, is the assignment of tasks accurate? Or is anyone exceeding the time and effort that's been initially assigned to them? So we're really being sensitive to monitoring that and making sure it's equal and balanced. But yes, Aspire will still be here on a monthly basis, providing you all with those reports. We have adjusted the expectations as to when that information will be provided to the board in advance of board meetings. So you can expect to receive that information the Friday before your monthly board meeting, so that you have sufficient time to evaluate. And that was one of many logistical things that needed to be addressed, and that we have addressed in this current contract negotiation.
Got it. Thank you.
Well, it's a good catch. I'm sure we all appreciate getting these things just a little sooner, for sure. Good. Any other questions for Christy about Aspire? Okay. All right. Let's keep moving then. So the next topic is. It's our last topic. It's also our lengthiest, I suspect. A lot to review and discuss here. And it is, of course, related to COVID-19 and if and when to reopen TMS for in-person instruction. So Christy, we'd like to keep you in the meeting, at least for the time being here for sure. And again, as I mentioned at the outset, thanks to Christy, thanks to the staff, thank you to the faculty for the incredible amount of work to get the school up and running under our distance learning plan. Of course, we do have a number of topics to discuss and some things to review as a board, but I thought maybe we could start with an update from Christy on some things specifically around how things have been going for the first 7 or 8 days of distance learning here, 8 days, as well as the on-site services offering, on-site support services offering, that is. And really, is there anything that we have learned from, we sort of the administration, the running of the school, is there anything we have learned over the last handful of days about how things are going or what we should have in mind as a board moving forward? So I know board members, there was information in Christy's report, so I'm not going to ask Christy to repeat all of that. But if you did have questions about what's in there, let's use now as an opportunity to ask those questions.
So one of the things that stood out to me, Christy, in your report was you noted that you didn't feel that the school was ready to resume in-person learning at this time, and you identified that we've only had 6 to 7 days of distance learning, and that's still kind of getting hammered out. It's a work in progress, and that there are other operational challenges and logistical challenges to reopening. And I was wondering if you could give us, you gave us kind of a summary of what some of those things were in the report. I was wondering if in this conversation we could get into a little bit more detail about what those things are and why it would be so difficult to resume in-person learning right now.
So when I reported,
from your perspective.
Sure. So when I reported that information, it wasn't speaking from a perspective of whether we're, as a school and in our location, meeting metrics and benchmarks according to the Department of Health. The information I shared was more geared toward if the board decides to reopen, I wanted the board to consider the fact that there would be some transition time that would be needed. And I was more concerned about flipping that switch immediately to go back in person. There are still some logistical matters that need to be worked out. So what I was hoping to accomplish is that if the board does this evening decide on a date certain to reopen, that it builds in enough time so that we can implement and test our mitigation plan, for instance, drop off and pickup and cohorting and staggering starts for particular classes, instead of just flipping a switch and saying, okay, September 7th, 8th, everybody comes back and we have 300 students on campus. I just want to be mindful of those logistics and do it in a staggered, safe, manageable way for the benefit of not only the students, but also the faculty and staff. So I don't mean to suggest that we are not ready, but we do need some additional time. And really, we've kind of put some things on hold until the board does set a date so that we can build in some deadlines and get the information out to parents and really work through those logistical details in order to have a successful re-entry into brick and mortar instruction.
Got it. And I'm sorry if I mischaracterized your report in any way. That wasn't my intention. So I'm just trying to think from our perspective, since we meet every 2 weeks. So there's like a lot of lead time before we can, make a decision one way or the other. So at this point, like just logistically figuring out all the things, if we were to make a decision, how much more time would you need as of just sitting here today? Right? And I know that's maybe an impossible question, but and it can be an estimate, a very rough estimate, but I'm just trying to get kind of a big picture view of the world here.
Yeah, and Gregory, it's a completely fair question, and I didn't mean to suggest that you were mischaracterizing. I just wanted to be more informative for the participants, so that without having the benefit of the report, knowing where we were coming from. And back to your question, yeah, it's a fantastic question. You have received, as a board, I'm sure, positions expressed in email or otherwise from members of the community. We issued a survey to the faculty to assess their feelings of readiness, and that went out on Saturday, and I've shared those results with the board as well. I believe that as of today, the LDC has submitted some information and their insight as to when they think they will be ready. And the dates are across the board. I think at a very minimum, we would need 2 to 3 weeks. Safe, 4 to 5 weeks. But again, you've received various information, various perspectives. So the range does seem to be 2 weeks to 6 weeks to not at all.
Yep. And we will, Christy, thank you for the survey and survey results. We will take a look at those in a few minutes. All right, so that's helpful. So we're saying, hey, once there's a green light to have some element of instruction be in person, 3 weeks minimum lead time. That makes sense, right? We have to prepare parents, we have to prepare faculty. There's things to work out to transition from distance learning to in person, and I'm sure, but it's helpful to have a general sense. April, were you about to ask a question?
Yeah, I was thinking about the reopening plan that we got initially. That was the just the outline of how a hybrid program would look and work. And then looking at this report, doesn't mention the logistics of that. How is that going in terms of figuring out how this would work? If we do vote yes, okay, in person, we can start in however many weeks. I still don't feel like I have a clear picture of how that will go, considering how small our staff is and how teachers would be doing online and also in person. I'm just wondering how those discussions are going, what the ideas are, if there is a plan in place, or if it's still in the works. Just something. I just need some clarity, I guess. We all do.
well, exactly. And so I would say that there are plans in place and contingencies being anticipated, but we likewise would need some clarity. I mean, if we have some sort of date around which we could prepare to implement those contingencies, that would be helpful. We've been trying to anticipate as much as possible under various scenarios. We know that under any scenario, there are certain things that we need to do. For instance, really getting that information out there for the cohorting and drop off and pick up, and what the health and safety expectations are going to be for not only students, but for faculty and staff. And yes, we do have working plans, but it's really hard to pick which one we need to roll out until we have some more information as to what date we need to be ready and whether the board is okay with the staggering start. Starting with, just certain classes and then expanding over what course of time. So there are a lot of unknowns. We are, like I said, we do have working plans. Putting those finalized touches on it really does stem from the date that we are expected to implement those. But we are still moving forward with those informational pieces, such as, getting the protocols out to parents and helping kids understand what the mask requirements are going to be, and the hand sanitation and recess. And so, we had a plan. It's been, and again, it was an anticipated plan based on the information that we had, and that is contained in the mitigation plan that is posted, and that was submitted. It's going to require some revision. Absolutely. Things are still changing just from, a health state and local perspective.
I think we knew that going in, right? That the plans would be in motion. They'd be amended as we needed to. Mm-hmm. Christy, can you speak a little bit about the staggered start? I'm intrigued by the idea, and how would you see that playing out? Where would we start? Or which grades would we start? How much lead time, or how much time between each sort of round that would join? Or hey, if it's not fully developed and you don't want to talk about it a whole lot, that's fine too. Just let us know.
It's both, Matt. So I appreciate the ability to say so. We have begun preliminary discussions about what a staggered start would look like. I can represent that we agree that a staggered start is best. Now, what grades would be first, what grades would be last, we have not worked out those details to such an extent. We're not talking about many weeks or months apart from starting. It's, 3 to 5 days in terms of a staggered start. It wouldn't be one class at a time. It would be certain groups or classes at a time. Mr. Tanner can also weigh in. I know the LDC has been having conversations about this as well. One idea is to have, the starting group be K through 3, because the youngers would need to take that time to acclimate themselves to the new, drop off sanitation procedure before they get into class. So we're starting there, and we will work out the logistics beyond that. But that's really where our starting point is focusing on the fact that the youngers they're just going to struggle a little bit more, and they're going to need a little bit more guidance and have some time to really get settled and get into their rhythm and routine. And so we really want to be successful for the students and for the faculty and staff. So that's really where we're starting. And I don't think I can provide more details to that, but we are actively working on it, and we'll be able to provide a rollout plan for sure.
It's a really sensible way of proceeding. Start small, work out the kinks, and if that particular group, for the reasons you mentioned, it may just take them a little longer to adjust. Mm-hmm. And I'd say too, it's probably the group that is faring least well in a remote environment. So I would want to start with our younger students also, for those reasons. So maybe it's a few grades, and then the rest of the middle school, and then the high school to follow, something like that. Maybe over the course of, maybe you could even do a Monday, right? Just spread them out over a week. Okay, as a possibility. These are obviously it's not set in stone. If we, as the board said, hey, that's a great idea, we want to hear more, or we'd like to see the full plan for a staggered rollout, maybe some of the detail, might we be able to have that by our next meeting, which is September 8th, I want to say? 2 weeks from now?
I think that is completely feasible. It is really our primary focus because we are anticipating that there is going to be some sort of date or time frame established, and we do want to be prepared for that. We also want to be prepared and give families enough time to settle into the remote piece because it is going to live with us throughout the duration of the year. And so that is another reason why I put in my report that we need enough time, not only for the families, but in particular the students, to get acclimated to the remote. And it's really also to just prepare for if we need to flip that switch throughout the year, if we have some sort of spike or need to transition immediately back to remote, that it's familiar. And just being 6 days in, it takes a little bit more time than that to settle into such a drastic change in routine and rhythm.
Yep.
So that is why I put that in there as well.
And I'm mindful too that if we are in a staggered approach, even if it's just for a couple of weeks, there will be some families where that's hard for them because they could have, if they've got a few kids at the school, then they could have one who's going in person and one who's still distant learning. Good. Board members, what other, I know we still have other topics to discuss, but while we're talking about this, what other things? Mr. Tanner?
Matt, if I could get in there for just a moment, I would just put in a plea for the younger grades in terms of grades 1 through 3. And I agree with your language. The group that is suffering most are the grades 1 through 3. I've taught first grade a couple of times, and I've spent a pretty good part of my career in the younger grades, and those teachers are doing a yeoman's work in trying to engage the children electronically. It's very difficult, and I just please open up your hearts and try to understand. These are small children, and they need to have the company of their peers and to play outside and climb trees and be able to work in their main lesson books and hear a teacher lovingly give a story. Trying to form a first grade class electronically is really, Eugene Ionesco couldn't think up, something like this. It is really almost absurd, if not completely and utterly absurd. So if you could hear that, I would ask you to please do so. I don't know about kindergarten. I imagine it's much the same, but I am familiar with the grades, and so I would just say those 3 grades are really, really struggling. I am blessed that I have a class that I've had since the first grade, and they know the form. But trying to bring in a new student is very tricky, if not impossible, because, children are still learning through imitation, even up into the middle school, and they need to be in school. So we're getting along all right. My class has been, they have been model students. They've been there. They've been on time. They've been extremely patient and very helpful with me and the technology, and I'm so proud of them. I really am. But I desperately need to have them back in the classroom at some point. this is so unfair, and we're playing a very dangerous game with the education of these children. A year to maybe even 2 years, if this continues to go on much longer. And I can get off the soapbox. I'm not trying to preach, but I just want you to hear that with your hearts, that's really hard. Now, the high school has reported to me that they're getting along all right, but there's always another side of the coin there, because the high school is a high stakes game. You know, we're trying to put kids in college, or put them into careers, or, get them ready for their adult life, or they call it now, you're a novice adult when you're from 20 to 22, to get them, to prepare them for that. So sooner or later, we're going to have to get them back as well. But I don't want to go around in circles, but the first through third grade really need to come back as soon as they possibly can.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Tanner. I appreciate that. All right. Any other questions about the report, or shall we dive into the slide deck, which has a few additional topics for us to consider? Okay. Well, not hearing anybody, then why don't we, Gregory, if you have the ability to share screen here on that, with the document to help us walk through the discussion. So while Gregory's doing that, so I'm sure the board members recall that when we talked about this 4 weeks ago at our July 29th meeting, we committed to discussing this topic again tonight. And between now and then, of course, I think it was August 6th, there was additional guidance issued by the Arizona Department of Health Services, and under the governor's order, we are required to consider that guidance. So naturally, we will go ahead and do that. And of course, there's other things that we want to consider and discuss as well. So to help guide us through that, we've put together this slide deck. It's intended to be a discussion document for the board, for all of us. Not just one of us. So please, board members, as we go through this, of course, chime in with questions and comments, as we've just been doing. And to be clear, too, we created this document to have transparency for our community, the faculty, the staff, the parents, and students of DMS. We want to be clear about how we're making these decisions and what we're basing our decisions on. And this gives us a way to be transparent. It also gives us a little bit of structure to think through the issues and comply with the state-issued guidelines to help ensure that we are making good, well-founded decisions, and make sure that we're looking at it from all the angles, because there are a lot of different perspectives and angles to look at here, whether it's our personal experiences, our professional experiences, data, information, things of that sort. And if we need to, this is a framework, hopefully, that we can reuse over time. So why don't we progress through the deck here? And again, it's hard for me to see everybody on my screen at the same time. So if you do have a question or a comment, just chime in, board members. So we'll walk through very quickly a few guiding principles. This is basically the same as we looked at 4 weeks ago. We've got some criteria as well as some information. We've touched on a few of those already, whether it's data related to community spread or it's the faculty survey, plus some opinions from the faculty and the leadership teams. So we'll go through that, and then that tees up the decision for the board. So briefly, for the benefit of those watching, our guiding principles, of course, maintain our faithfulness to DMS's mission and goals. Mr. Tanner was just speaking pretty eloquently about several of those. And to his point, I think we do all recognize and value, and it is a school, of course, and it's best done when everyone is together in person, learning and growing and developing together. We have to balance that, of course, with safety and health for everybody, not just the students, not just the faculty and staff, but for parents and families at home as well. This is all part of our community, and so we need to have that lens as we think through these things. There are, of course, legal obligations and other expectations, things we have to keep in mind. We were talking earlier about the grant, the Enrollment Stability Grant Program. So there are financial implications of some of these things. Geographically, we know that our students come from all over the Valley. So it's not like we can just zero in on what's happening in one particular zip code or even one particular school district. If you're looking at it from a public school perspective, we know that our students come from the entire Valley, as do our faculty and staff. So we have to keep an eye on how things are going across the Valley. We've touched on hygiene and health-related procedures already a little bit. Christy was talking about that and making sure we're ready for when students and others return. And of course, we're limiting what we do and what we decide to what happens at DMS. We're not trying to influence what people do outside of school and campus. And at the end of the day, make the best possible decision we can for all involved. So those are our guiding principles. I don't think anything there terribly surprising. Pretty straightforward. All right, so I thought we might spend a little bit of time on this page. What we were trying to do is capture on sort of one page, what are all the things, what are all the topics, the criteria, if you will, for how we, the board, should consider and make decisions. And again, we've touched on a few of these, at least obliquely already. One of course, is this is a Waldorf-inspired school. It's a public charter Waldorf school. So that philosophy is significant. We each have our professional experiences. Those come to bear in a variety of ways. Our personal beliefs too, about education, let's say, or what we believe is best. We did get input from the faculty and staff who responded to the survey that Christy mentioned a few minutes ago, and we have that information on another page. So we should take a look at that. I think the board all received the recommendations from the LDC. It was a memo that came in this afternoon. And also Christy's recommendations. So I put that under the category of leadership recommendations. I think it is relevant to our decision-making, what everybody else is doing. And we're not necessarily controlled or governed by them, obviously. But having an awareness of what everybody else is up to is sensible. So that's the other schools in the Phoenix area, as well as the other public charter Waldorf schools in Arizona. And then again, since we've had now 8 days of distance learning, what have been our experiences? What have we learned about either the successes or the challenges with distance learning? And by the same token, we know we've had some students on campus for the on-site support services program. So what have we learned from that? And then campus readiness is an important topic. And by that, I mean our physical readiness. Do we have hand washing stations and PPE and things of that sort? And some of the protocols that Christy mentioned, do we have all that ironed out and ready to go? And then the last item on the list here is the state issued guidance, which I mentioned we are required to consider. Again, I was trying to get a list of all of the things here, things that, and some of these we talked about 4 weeks ago. And but let me pause and see, have we missed any categories of information or any particular criteria that you as board members think we should be considering? Okay, well, I'm not hearing any. So before we proceed with the rest of what's in the deck is more data and information. So perhaps we can have a discussion about professional experiences or other opinions. Gregory?
Yeah, sorry. Typing and then I was looking at this a little more closely, and something jumped out at me that's not on here, which is like guidance from the CDC, the World Health Organization, those sorts of things. I think those are relevant factors that we can and should consider, in addition to what Arizona and Maricopa County officials are saying. I think there's a lot more out there in terms of reopening and criteria that have been successful than we just have locally.
That seems fair. What else? Well, does anyone want to get the, yeah. Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Nathaniel. Nathaniel, I'm sorry, I didn't get any of that. You broke up. You're breaking up pretty badly.
You know, there's probably some obscure things, but for the context, more than sufficient.
Okay.
Let me move.
So, I don't know about the rest of you guys, but the only part of what Nathaniel said that I caught was, for the context should be more than sufficient. So I think maybe the last 5 or 6 words.
That was all I said.
I thought I heard something along the lines of there may be some more esoteric items in here, but this is sufficient to get us rolling. All right.
For not hearing what I said, that was a pretty good summary. So thank you.
Reading minds. Okay.
Sorry, I'm in a
well,
bad connectivity state, so I turned my camera off, but I can hear.
Okay. Well,
I can hear. I just can't be seen. So continue.
and I think for now that's fine. Like I said earlier, just chime in when you have something. Well, do you want to talk about some of these particular topics, or do you want to walk through the some of the other information and data that's in here? I'm trying to get at how board members, how do you want to have this conversation?
I think it's worth 5 minutes maybe of walking through the data. I don't think we need to dwell on it unnecessarily, but I think it would be helpful just to see it.
Sorry, Mr. Tanner, what was that?
I agree. I'd like to look at the data for a couple of minutes.
Okay. All right.
Please.
Yep. All right, Gregory, why don't you the first piece of data that we have here, and hopefully folks can read it. This is the results of the faculty and staff survey that Christy mentioned that was launched, I think, on Sunday and then closed either yesterday or the day before. So pretty quick turnaround. Just trying to get a pulse on what the faculty and staff think. We got about 20, I think it was 21 responses, and there were only 3 questions asked, and these are 2 of them. And so on the left-hand side, it's when will you be ready and prepared for students to return in person? And again, you can see the dispersion of answers here. They're approximately they're not quite in date order. At the top is, looks like 7 folks said right after Labor Day. A couple of folks said towards the end of September. 6 or so, I think that's aligned to when the health metrics are met. And we'll go through those in a few minutes. And then you can see a number of responses were single response answers. And you had the ability to answer other. And if you did so, this is on the right-hand side of the page. If you answered other, you were asked to provide a date. And so this is a summary of when those dates were. You can see about half in September, about half in October, and then a handful much further out, a few in January and one not for another year.
I have a quick question for Christy as we're looking at this survey. Can you tell us, I see that we got 21 responses, but can you tell us how many members of faculty and staff this went out to, so we know how many people responded based on that?
I can. Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I hope so.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. My earpods died too. So it went out to all teaching faculty, including specialties. So K through 12 and specialty teachers. It did not go to instructional assistants or any other support staff. It was mainly directed to those who were providing direct instruction to the students.
Yeah, and how many people is that then?
We were pretty close. We got 21. I think maybe we're missing 3 or 4.
Okay. All right, that's good to know. So I'm not sure about all of you, but what I take away from this is most folks are saying, October. If you said October, you're capturing 20 It's hard to tell from the numbers here, as they don't quite add up. You're catching a lot.
I am, and while we're on the phone, I'm trying to get you precise numbers. So I hope to have those within a minute or so.
Okay. Well, why don't we come back to this then? Unless anybody has particular questions right now.
I'm sorry, Matt. I'm having trouble. How did you get that October would be capturing the most? Because I see clear answers for September 8th, September 26th, and September 10th. And then I see the other side. And that's the part I'm having real problem interpreting. If that's like September 10th or 10 people said September 2020. What's your take? Or maybe Christy, you can clarify that for us.
So I can clarify the dates that were provided in the survey. The first date was the day after Labor Day, so September 8th. And then there was the start of the second quarter, so that's about October 5th or so. And then there was a month out from this date, from this board meeting, so September 26th. That's the relevance of that date. And then teachers were allowed to put in there, if they don't think that any of those they can align with, what date could they align with? And so that's what you're seeing on the second part of that screen to the right.
Mm-hmm. And so if I look at the line that says September 2020, is the 10 there, that's the date in September that there's one vote for, and then there's 2 votes for September 14th? I think that adds up to 7 responses if you look at it that way.
Sorry, I'm working from 2 different devices, Gregory, bear with me.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand what we're seeing here.
Sure, absolutely. So September 10th, that was a write-in date. That was not a date that was for a pre-fill answer. The only pre-fill answers were day after Labor Day, 1 month from this board meeting, September 26th, and October 5th, which would be about the start of the second quarter. So any of the other dates reflected on this survey are those write-in dates where faculty were able to put in a date by which they would feel comfortable and ready to return.
Okay.
And we received, so we have 42 total staff members. There were 21 teachers who responded to that. And that is the full gamut of direct instructional teachers.
So we got everybody. So it's
we got everybody. I think there's a discrepancy as to one, just because we have the third grade is still in transition, and we're using existing faculty members to help bridge that gap until we can find a permanent teacher. So that's why it's at 21.
all right. So then if I'm looking correctly, then at the left-hand side here, so 7 responses were September 8th, 2 responses were the 26th, 6 responses were October 5th, excuse me. And then all these other one-offs were people selected other.
Correct.
And looks like there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like 10. And for those 10, they had the option of clicking in a date.
Yeah.
And it looks like one person said September 10th, 2 said September 14th, 1 said October 12th, etc.
So we had one person say September 10th, two people say September 14th, one person say October 12th, which is actually Columbus Day, so it would be October 13th, which would be our 40th day. There were two others who said January 1 and January 4, and then one person who said August.
Yep. Okay. Yep, that's right, Gregory. I think that's right. So let's say 15 of the 21. It's really just 3 people who said not September or October. So 18 of the 21 said at some point in September or October. And it's just 3 people, 2 said January 2021, and 1 person said August of 2021.
Right. 2 people said, right. 2 people said January 2021. 1 person said August 2021.
Got it. Okay. Gregory, does that make sense?
Yes. So it looks like it's a fairly, if you split it into 2 categories, there's about half of folks who think that we should resume in September at some point, either September 8th or 26th. And then the other half think October or later.
Yep. Okay. Good. And Christy, thank you for providing this. All right. Any other questions, board members, on this particular page? Nope. Okay.
I just wanted to point out, though, October and later aren't the same things. October is closer to September. So if you wanted to group things together, the grouping September and October, that's more co-joined than October and later. So I don't know that I necessarily agree with the categorization.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that's fair. There are 3 people who say January or 2021 and later, and everybody else is in favor of September or October of this year. I think that's fair.
Yep. All right. Why don't we keep going here? Is it just me, or are we relatively zoomed in here? Well, it might just be my screen. All right. So what we did here is include the relevant language from Governor Ducey's executive order from about a month ago, requiring us to, as it says here, each school district and charter school shall consider these recommendations, meaning those that have been developed by the Department of Health Services. We're also supposed to consider guidance from county health officials, community needs and available resources, et cetera. And so those are included in the criteria that we were looking at on that page a few minutes ago. And this is, again, pretty recent. The guidance, the guidelines, and the dashboard that the state put out there is just from a couple of weeks ago, August 6th. I think we can keep going here, Gregory. When the Department of Health Services put out their what they called Safely Returning to In-Person Instruction publication on August 6th. They said that there were two things for boards like us to consider. First is the quality of the school's mitigation plan. And the second is the level of spread occurring in the community, or level of community spread. And that second one is, we've probably all seen the dashboard and things of that sort. That second component is where that comes into play. So again, this is just background for all of us and anybody who might be watching. And I think this checklist is actually worth us taking a look at in a little bit of, so maybe we can pause here. So again, this is a screenshot of the checklist from that document that the Department of Health Services put out on August 6th. And it has these 4 red boxes or check mark boxes for us to look at. First is whether or not reopening the buildings, the brick and mortar, for on-site services or in-person instruction is consistent with applicable state and local orders. I think it is. I'm not aware of any state or local orders preventing us from being open, preventing us from having and offering the on-site support services, et cetera. So I think this one would be checked yes. Is anybody aware of any particular orders or anything that would prevent us from being open? Okay. The second one is all the data and the dashboard that the state and county put out, and what they're saying here is that all 3 benchmarks are within the minimal or moderate spread category for 2 weeks. So again, we've got that on subsequent slides here, so we'll take a look at that in a moment. And they've got the 3 different data points called out here. The third red checkbox is that the adopted mitigation plan includes strategies for traditional, hybrid, virtual, and intermittent models. And this is the mitigation plan that we, the board, approved at our last meeting. And I think our mitigation plan does include those strategies. So I would also check this one as yes, met. But again, I'll pause here if anybody feels differently.
Hey, Matt.
Hey, John.
You know, the one thing that I was thinking about is, and I know we've already adopted a mitigation plan, so maybe it might not be the best time to do this, but have we had any health professionals review that mitigation plan, make any recommendations that we might have missed?
I don't know. Christy? I mean, I don't think, John, it's a fair question. I don't think we were required to, just to be clear. I don't think we were required to.
I certainly understand we weren't required to, but I think if we want to go to the nth degree of safety, you know, trying to contact some health professionals to give us an opinion. I'm not saying they have to sign off on it and, you know, they're responsible for it. But, you know, I'm not a doctor or a nurse or that. And, you know, there's probably not a lot of knowledge that we might be able to tap into that could preview it for us.
Christy?
Well, for sure, none of us is a healthcare professional. The mitigation plan was created using the same information that is available to all schools based on not only the Maricopa County Health Services, but also the Arizona Department of Health Services. So what is contained in the mitigation plan is based on the information that has been shared to all schools It has not been vetted by any particular healthcare professional. And I don't know if the board wants that to happen. It would be a matter of who we need to, who we would identify to do that. We've been operating and developing plans and protocols based on the information that has been provided by those two health agencies.
Yeah, I understand, Christy. I was just putting it out there. I understand that that it's approved. We put it together using all of those parameters. It just came to me and I thought, hey, maybe that's another step we could do. That's all. But thank you.
Any other questions about the mitigation plan? Okay. And then the last one is that the mitigation plan has been posted on our website. LEA, I believe, is local educational. All right, I forget what the A stands for, but it's us. It's DMS. I believe we have posted that, right, Christy?
That's correct. It is available on our website and has been submitted to the Charter Board as of August 14th.
All right. Good. Okay. So it certainly seems to me that the first, third, and fourth have been met. If we were looking at this checklist, the question, of course, will be that second one, and we'll look at that one in a second where it has the benchmarks. I do want to talk briefly about campus readiness. Christy, I think the board has seen some email traffic and other things. Just, are we sure that that we either are now or could be within, a week or two, really ready to have all the PPE we need to have all of the hand wash stations that we need to have the cleaning company that we've hired doing an effective job? Are all those things really lined up?
We have all of the PPE ready and have for over 6 weeks. So we are good to go with PPE. The hand washing stations, we are continuing to refine, but those will be ready, which is why I'm asking for more than just a few days in order to get those in place and in running and working order. But we do have a plan to implement those hand washing stations, and we are working on signage and the protocols, again, for the drop off and pickup and the cohorting and the staggered recess and the staggered start. We do have basic plans in place. They will require some modification, but we have a really good working plan to start from. So we're good there. Again, it's just a matter of the time frame that we're provided, and again, asking for at least 2 weeks in order to get that really nailed down and accomplished. We do have a cleaning company. I do have the scope of work, the equipment and chemicals that they are using to disinfect. One of the things that we are considering is adding a day porter to that process. And this company that we're using, which is Plan B Services, they have the capability. They serve a lot of schools across the valley. So we could implement that and utilize the COVID grant funds in order to pay for that. So we're relatively ready to go there. So I think the remaining thing is really just the educational piece. We do need some time to implement what I just described. Not a lot, but some time. And then also just the educational piece and the patience and the support of those families who will be joining us to really educate them and our faculty and staff to adhere to the health and safety protocols. So we're ready to go. We're ready to roll those out, finalize the development of that and roll that out. And there's just a little bit of time that we need to really practice and refine that. But generally, yes, we are ready.
Okay. And I'd like to emphasize that I think it's totally fair for you to say, hey, we still need a little bit of time to put all those things together, because the way at least I imagine it, the 2 or 3 weeks leading up to August 17th, we're firmly prepping for distance learning. And so some of these other things, like the protocols, like, reminding parents about what drop-off is going to look like and things like that, that got put aside so you and others could focus on the distance learning plan and having that as rock solid as it could be and all that came with that. So again, I think it's perfectly fair and reasonable and the right approach to say we would need a little time